Welcome to the Target Focus Training Firearms video. This is going to cover the principles of both using a firearm, retaining your firearm, and disarming a firearm. The important thing to understand is the principles that are addressed in the video are absolutely crucial. The techniques themselves are secondary. If you don't understand the principles, the overriding principles of what it takes to get in and take a firearm away from somebody or retain the firearm that you have with you, everything else is going to be secondary in its importance. So pay close attention to what we're talking about and what the overall principles are and what the differences are compared to non-firing weapons. The dangers associated with a firearm and also just the principles that you can use to your advantage. The way to start off a video that's going to show the use of firearms and also disarming firearms is, again, everything in target focus training is principle based. So there are two simple principles that you need to understand. One for when you're disarming somebody, one when you're retaining a firearm. And if either one of these principles are ever violated in any sort of instruction that you're being shown when it comes to this subject, then you can easily dismiss what's being shown, because if you violate these, there's a high likelihood that you have a good chance of being shot. So let's look at this. The real threat of this particular weapon is the muzzle. The muzzle is where the bullet comes out. Okay, so again, this is it. The difference between this and another weapon is the reach that a gun has. We've emphasized this a couple times in the video, but by merely dropping the weapon, a loaded weapon, there's a chance that the gun can go off. Now, we always assume the weapon goes off. So there's a couple of concerns. One is I need to get beyond this muzzle and get out of the way so that the bullet can go somewhere other than my body. And then that is the direct threat. The direct threat is to the gun right in front of me. The indirect threat is where this bullet goes. If I have an interest, if there's nobody that I'm worried about over here, then I don't care. But if I have family members, friends, somebody that's behind me or in the background, I'm going to be concerned not only that the bullet doesn't hit me, but that I don't cause the bullet to go into a field of fire that includes somebody that I love. So those are two caveats. Now, this is just kind of an introduction to the overriding principles. We can't cover everything in just one video. But understand, the indirect is something that you don't face with other weapons. Okay? So, now, let's look at this. There's a couple things I can do. I've got the weapon trained on my skull at this point. This man could pull the trigger. Now, let's see. There's a couple of things that I know. I talk about rotation and penetration. Well, if I just rotate, that really doesn't get much for me. I mean, I really haven't achieved my goal, which is to get out of the way of this particular muzzle so the bullet doesn't empty into my skull and create an ashtray out of the back of my skull here. What I'm looking at is, okay, well, I got to penetrate also. But if I just penetrate, you know, all I'm going to get is this. That's not going to get me much either. It doesn't displace the gun, doesn't get me out of harm's way at all. But when you combine the two, rotation and penetration, you get a great result, which is basically I rotate and penetrate. Then I achieve, without striking, without doing anything else, I am out of danger, field of fire. It doesn't matter if it's from behind. I can just rotate and penetrate. And there are a variety of extreme circumstances you can be put in that allow you to use a rotation and penetration principle. I mean, even if Paul grabs me by the hair, pulls me back, pulls me off balance and leads me, again, just by rotating and penetrating, I am beyond the field of fire at this point, and I'm right into what? His central nervous system, so that I can start taking advantage of targets close to me. Now, the techniques in the video are going to show you a variety of ways to manipulate this overriding principle. But I rotate and penetrate, and then I push to the ground. So even on a simple technique where I come up under and I grab the weapon and I get beyond the field of fire, I come up, you come up, you rotate, you penetrate, you have the weapon. I'm beyond the field of fire. I rotated, I penetrated, I've got the arm, and I'm about to go. I'm going to push all the way to the ground and take the man to the ground. You'll get this technique later. The deal is, if I don't understand that once I'm beyond the field of fire and I push all the way to the ground, there's a chance that if I try to pull the weapon,
that the weapon could come back into the field of fire and right into my center line. If Paul just merely drops on his butt at this point and I'm pulling on the weapon will empty into me. Once I get beyond the field of fire, once I penetrate and rotate beyond the threat of the muzzle, I need to keep pushing until that person's on the ground and no longer a threat and broken. That is a key principle. The exact opposite is different when I am trying to retain a weapon. Say I'm going through my house. And I'm looking, I go around the corner and this guy jumps out and grabs my weapon. At that point, if I want to retain the weapon at this point, I don't push with him, I don't provide structure, I merely just do two opposing forces. I sit down and pull right into center line. So when I retain, I pull. So very simple principles. When you're going to disarm somebody, it's a push. When you're going to retain your firearm, it's a pull. Understand those two, and again, you've cut through all the clutter of firearms use and disarmament. A firearm is not a substitution for fighting ability. Again, you're given, watching these tapes, using target-focused training allows you to really develop your brain as your primary weapon system, your body as your secondary weapon, and then allows you to maximize the use of tools such as the firearm. But understand, just merely putting a firearm in your, people often put firearms in their hands as a substitute for fighting ability. Don't let that be you. Because again, just merely shooting somebody does not guarantee trauma, does not guarantee that this man's no longer a threat. Yes, it can do, I can sit there and I can pump around into Paul, and it's not like the movies. That's probably about what you'll get, a shot like this. If you've ever seen somebody shot or shot somebody, you realize they don't go flying the way you see in the movies. They just react. It's a quick trauma. And if your targeting is not good, as many police officers can tell you, if you do not target the central nervous system, if you shoot to injure, you're in a real trouble because everybody's response to pain tolerance is very different. If I'm not shutting down that central nervous system, if I'm not getting hard, if I'm not cutting off the brain, if I'm not shooting that spinal cord, getting a cut in the body and shutting down the central nervous system, I got a real problem. Much more. I could shoot him a couple of times in the stomach and may or may not end his life, may or may not end the throat, but I'm much more assured if I just step in and I crush that trachea. I crush that trachea, I know that's a guaranteed kill. A lot of times with your hands, you can gauge the trauma that you inflict on somebody far superior than if you look at what you do with a weapon. Targeting is extremely important when you use a firearm. Shot placement is what they call it. In target-focused training, we have you doing your shot placement with your body weapons from the first technique that we show you. And we cannot emphasize targeting enough. So again, understand, don't get fascinated by a weapon, a tool. Just understand its capabilities, its pros and its cons.
Always assume the firearm is loaded. We can't stress this enough. Upon picking up a firearm, regardless of what someone else assures you, check to make sure the handgun is clear before anything else occurs. The accidental shooting occurs with unloaded guns. It's important that the weapon that you use in your hand contacts the hand solidly. That's in the thenar and hyperthenar pads of the palm. Essentially, make sure that a tight natural fist is made. A number of clients have been surprised by the incorrect grip they have learned or self-taught. This is a real easy test. Place the empty handgun in your hand, arm straight, pointing down by your side. Squeeze the butt and the trigger as tightly as you can. Think high-stress shooting environment. Now raise your arm up until the gun is pointing forward. Keep that grip tight. If the butt of the gun is not pressed hard in the hyperthenar pad, the barrel will point slightly off to your right, if right-handed. This is sufficient for you to miss a man-sized target at 0 to 2 meters. The butt of your gun should cut into the pinky side pad of your palm. Now we're going to break down the different areas of the firearm. Let's look at the action. This is the part of the firearm that loads, fires, and ejects a cartridge. Next, we're going to look at the barrel. This is the metal tube through which the bullet is fired. Then we have the bullets. These are projectiles. They're shaped and composed differently for a variety of purposes. The butt or the buttstock. This is the portion of the gun which is held or shouldered. The cartridge, also called a round. It's made up of a case, primer, powder, and bullets. Chamber, the portion of the action that holds the cartridge ready for firing. Magazine. This device is for storing the cartridges in a repeating firearm for loading into the chamber. Muzzle, the end of the barrel out of which the bullet comes. Safety, a mechanism on an action to prevent firing of the gun. Sights, the device on top of the barrel that allows the gun to be aimed. Slide assembly, the portion of the action on the semi-automatic pistol that slides back during the firing process. Stock, a wood, metal, or plastic frame that holds the barrel and action and allows the gun to be held firmly. Trigger, a part of the action that begins the firing process. Trigger guard, portion of the stock that protects the trigger from accidental discharge. The location your finger should rest when not shooting. The muzzle is the only effective portion of the firearm, barring use of the gun as a club. Because the target must be distal to the muzzle for it to be effective, we can say the field of fire is anything that can be described past the muzzle. You always control the field of fire when handling firearms, either directly, when you control the firearm, or indirectly, by exploiting his reaction when he is holding the firearm for you. A large amount of media has perpetrated the myth that simply shooting someone is always fatal. This could not be further from the truth. While most of us may not know somebody that has survived a gunshot wound, many of us might have heard or know of someone that has perished at the end of a gun. A gunshot wound is bad trauma. It can easily be fatal. But I would not go so far to say that none of us has ever heard of somebody surviving a crushed throat in a fight, or a punctured heart from a knifing. The idea here is that a gunshot is a blanket statement that usually can refer to an injury anywhere in the body. Shooting someone in the foot could be considered relatively benign when contrasted with a headshot. Because of the dramatic difference in effects described, it's important that we again stress the importance of targeting when dealing with a weapon. If you have any intentions of pulling the trigger on a firearm, make sure your goal is maximum trauma. Do not shoot to injure. The police have recognized the effectiveness of this way of thinking, and you should too. If your goal is injury, do something, anything else. The opposing bodies act like anchors on the chains of the arm. When the other man attempts to disarm you, simply dropping your body weight down in a way will give you a straight line roughly between your center mass and his. Pull the trigger repeatedly. Also, you could let him have the weapon. Injuring him is much easier with his focus elsewhere. When he begins grabbing for the weapon, simply attack him. The opposite is true when disarming somebody. Always penetrate or push as the technique is executed. This compresses the chain and eliminates the possibility of them executing the aforementioned retention technique. A number of different shooting stances and techniques exist. There's the isosceles, the weaver, and the turnip seed weaver. But it's not the goal of this series, and it's beyond its focus as well. Suffice it to say that these stances are different methods of developing structure for the effective use of a firearm. While many people might not understand the need for structure behind a weapon, let us recall the Newtonian principle. For every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. With insufficient structure, a semi-automatic is incapable of cycling the action, resulting in limp wristing the gun. Every weapon requires structure, your brain and body included. Guns are for killing other people, not self-defense. Guns do not protect you. We know it's the common adage, I purchased a gun for home defense. Or you should carry a knife just in case you need to defend yourself. Let's be blunt. A firearm is designed to kill someone. A shotgun does not protect your home. It does not look out the window and call the cops because it sees somebody breaking into your car. You must pull the trigger while pointing it at the man with the intent of killing him for a shotgun to work best. It does not protect you unless protection is a euphemism for making somebody die. A firearm is a mechanism, not an object. The largest misconception about shooting is that they require an enemy. A firearm is a mechanism and needs only to ignite the cartridge to fire a bullet. A knife actually needs somebody to pick it up. A gun can go off from the floor. The gun always goes off. The goal of the following techniques is not to make sure that you take the gun from him before a shot goes off. That would be impossible. The purpose here is to ensure that you survive the incident and are able to get yourself and somebody else to medical aid. Here's another important caveat. If you don't know how to use it, don't. If you have no idea how to operate a firearm, then it's not the tool for you. Focusing on a gun that is confounding you in the middle of a life or death situation tends to yield the latter. If it's not yours, you don't know how to use it. Does it have more than one safety? How many cartridges are in it? What caliber is it? If you don't have the answer in the front of your mind, you might be in for a rude surprise. If you do use it, don't assume the man is dead because he's shot. Because of the grim reality here, it's also worth mentioning that the presence of blood from a gunshot is not a good barometer of the fatality. Yes, you might be bleeding from the wound, but if you can feel pain or taste blood, it simply means you are alive. Conversely, assuming the man is down and out because there is blood issuing from a hole might be a fatal lapse of judgment. Okay. It is far more dangerous to be a fighter with a gun than to be a gunfighter. Crushing the man's throat with your hand is more fatal, more assured than shooting him. Because of the bizarre nature of gunshot wounds, bullets ricocheting off the tips of people's noses, 9mm flattening out in the skull, sliding around and out the back of the skull, etc., it's important that you recognize the benefit of the feedback intrinsic in cause and effect relationships. Without reactions, it's difficult to gauge the quality of the injury, and frequently the trauma from the gunshots don't generate reactions. As we have said before, targeting is the key. When applying trauma to your hands, one usually has superior understanding of the quality and level of that trauma. If you miss the target, you can easily tell. If it is a fatal injury, the man tends to show it. But with the firearms, the flash and bang of the gun going off makes people think of themselves as being more effective, when in actuality they might be less so. So waiting and looking for weapons to enact the appropriate solution can spell your death. If we show you special techniques to use when fighting with guns, then you might feel compelled to stop and look to see what solution is appropriate to the problem. If he has a gun, I'm going to do A, but if he has a knife, I'm going to do B. More often than not, you will not see the gun. You might not even hear it go off. The other man won't be bothering to inform you of his gun, and you will be about halfway through the equation when the man makes an ashtray out of your skull. So hit him now. What you saw here today probably you thought is pretty extreme, the responses, but understand, violence is random. Criminal violence, which is on the rise, has absolutely no place in society, so your response has to be asocial. 99% of the time, what you think you need to respond to in a violent situation is truly just a social choice. You don't like what's going on. You have a choice and you choose to respond with violence. That's not what target-focused training is all about. Target-focused training is about imminent criminal violence, when you don't have a choice, when you either respond with violence or you die. That's what you saw. What we gave you here today is basically a nuclear weapon, completely useless unless you need it. The following is a short training segment showing two of my master instructors as they go through one coordination set. I've included this to show you the detail that you get when you come to TFT. I think you'll find it interesting, and I hope it motivates you to come visit us.
You're able to visualize what that person is doing. So you can actually see their arms flare and their head go back when you hit them in the jaw. If you're not seeing that, if you're not visualizing it, at least what it is that I'm describing here, you're not doing yourself the favor of truly operant fighting. You need to be able to visualize these elements. And that's a very, very advanced concept. I'm sure some of you may have toyed with it or even spent a lot of time with it. I have to give credit to Eric. You know, as soon as I posted, I hit post, and then I went back to go check it, and Eric's, I just got done doing an hour and a half of this stuff. I was like, whoa! So I got to give it credit to the people who are out there doing it, and hallucinatory fighting or whatever it was. That was an excellent description. And I also have to give credit to him because I never realized the implications of what it was that operant fighting really described, which is what we're doing here as well. You know, he said, well, when I was in Vegas, I think I was doing that. And I was like, no, he wasn't doing that. And I read and I said, well, wait, in actuality, he was doing that. He was out there controlling every element, going slow enough with his partner to make sure he had his balance in control, make sure the reactions were exactly what he wanted, make sure he was positioning him properly. That's operant fighting. Now, what my definition of it meant, there was no other guy. But as far as he's concerned, when he's fighting with the person there or not, it's the same. He's controlling everything. So, little round of applause. But excellent job. Excellent job. And that really kind of greasing. Stent just proved the opposite. Which is basically, if you can't let something be neutral, it's either greased or rusted, one or the other. And so a lot of times when you guys are doing the techniques incorrectly, you're doing this stent rule, which is that you're out here stunting your growth and making it impossible for you to do that same thing successfully with the same amount of output.
So Tom, what's the benefit of going beyond exhaustion if that's true?
There's benefits to going beyond exhaustion, and one of the benefits for that is it gives you a level of realism. In so much as a fight starts usually when you've been hit. Someone walks up to you and punches you in the solar plexus, or hits you with a bat across the ribs. You're not able to breathe as well. You're dealing with all the adrenaline dump. You have a lack of focus in the actual environment. Those sorts of things can be approximated by tiring you out. Now going to beyond fatigue, for this purpose, we also get the benefit of what they call installation. We get to make sure that you guys are just doing exactly what it is that you're supposed to do, because you can't use your musculature anymore. You can't use your superior, physical prowess to do these sorts of these techniques. You can't muscle it. You can't, do the big guy do and throw me anymore like Derek can when he's tired. After he gets tired, he starts fighting exactly like me. Just he's bigger. That's really the two major benefits there. Get yourself to the point where you would fall down if you don't put your hand on something. Right? Let's talk about that for a second. The primary muscles that you're using can last longer than the assisters. Right? The little tiny muscles that are holding you in those positions give out faster than, let's say, the rectus femoris. Because of that, if you reach out and hold on to something, put your hand on a chair while doing the knee drop or the cross step, you can stay up for longer without actually holding yourself up. So when you feel like you're almost gone and you're totally shot, reach out there, hold on to something. You can stay up a little bit longer. Get out of there before you drop.
How the techniques start, but it's the strike to the vagus nerve, take the head, and step back and hit him on the ground.
Just to be a joker. So it's that technique where I hit the guy, and then I hit him again, and he falls down, and then I hit him a couple times?
That's the one.
I think I've got 1 to 13 of those in here, so let me check real quick. Actually, I've got over 2,000 of those in here, but let me take a quick peek. Was it recent?
It's, I think it's an 8, or
Is it 8?
is it
That's
7
the one
or
I
8?
have. Does anybody have 8?
I have 8. Thumb, if I can borrow you. Right claw to eyes, right to left. Pivot from right to left away. Blind for the duration of the fight. Right roundhouse knee or kick, depending on distance to target, to spleen. So from there. Sorry. Boom, and yeah, sorry. Roundhouse this way, like this. Left forearm hammer to vagus, to right side of vagus. Setting right foot out of 2 above. Continue. Into left comb grab to back of head. Bend over further his left side, large stimulus, the parasympathetic system, begin to pass out. Grab chin with right. How do you hold that? Grab chin with right. Left step back and around, pivot on right foot. Rotate head counterclockwise to slam him down onto his back. Right there. And then in the description here it says, lay down hard, face up, head trauma, concussion, hemorrhaging, skull fracture, etc. Rise up, left kick to neck, whack. Stepping over him to straddle his head. Head to the direction of kick. Then rolls away. Huge stimulus to the parasympathetic system, probable vertebral injury. Right heel stomp to temple. Lay very still. Large head trauma. You remember that one, huh? Lay very still. Large head trauma, secondary concussion, hemorrhaging, skull fracture, etc. Bearing in mind, you can kick someone with your body weight, especially when you're kicking vertically down. If he's against the ground, you're kicking with twice your body weight. Because for my finger is this big, and I'm watching the two go come together. Very easy for me to do. Very difficult for me to do if I'm trying to throw a dart and actually hit a dime from across the room. It's a little bit more challenging, as opposed to taking a truck and driving it into the wall. It's pretty much easier to do. You want to make all of this targeting feel like it's a truck going into a wall. If your knuckles are all the way out there at the end of your arm, it's not working right. You want to have your field of vision very close on those knuckles. See the liver, see the knuckles, liver, knuckles, and give them the liver to knuckle connection. And you're going to see that happen. Fighting here means that you don't end up hurting your partner. Fighting there means you end up horribly injuring the man, because you know exactly where his liver starts. Rather than going, well, that's how far I normally punch. But rather, well, here's where the liver starts. So for Tony, I'm going to stop here. For this guy, it starts here. And I'm going to go ahead and follow all the way through that liver, all the way through, spin the men around, and look in the opposite direction. Got everything else to go for myself. Any other questions before we get into some street fighting?
The following is an impromptu workout between two of my master instructors at one of our live TFT training sessions. I've included it to show you what can be expected once you've mastered the TFT principles. You'll notice that these guys seamlessly work out with each other, going from technique to technique, focusing on targets, and just focusing solely on destroying the attacker. The following are actual comments from TFT clients that attended a live training session. I think you'll find the information informative as well as enjoyable.
I heard about TFT through a long-term friend of mine, Randy Zales. We spent 15, 20 years now through military and other endeavors, and he just could not shut up about this course.
Great. And what was your first experience like? How would you describe it?
I think someone said it. My first experience was life-changing. I've never encountered anything like this. In fact, a lot of the principles are diametrically opposed to what they teach you in other martial arts. For example, in my first experience with martial arts, I ended up behind someone and there was a wide open kidney shot, and I took it and I was immediately chastised for taking it, even though it was an opportunity that presented itself. Well, this is the other side of that coin, and they're saying if you see it, take it and use the target. So it's, again, totally different than anything else I've ever experienced.
And could you see yourself taking another course in the future?
I definitely see myself taking another course in the future. In fact, I'm planning on signing up for the mastery course, and they're going to be doing a lot of courses in Dallas, and so I'm excited about that. And met some people here from Dallas, and planning on working out with them, and maybe getting some other people involved. I know a lot of people that could use this. I'm a corporate executive in a 12-year-old marketing company, and I travel around the world. And you can't take weapons and guns and knives in those kind of places, and being able to utilize these techniques in a basically life-threatening situation is, I don't know how you put a price tag on that. For someone I know that might want to take the course but might have some apprehensions, I would say that one of the things they focus on here is control. I've never seen a course that emphasizes doing things as slow and as accurate as this course does. Most of the time it's more into, okay, learn it once, now go full speed. Whereas the whole emphasis here, all you hear all weekend long is the instructor saying, slow it down, focus, act on precision, don't hurt someone. But you can actually see how the actual practical application at full speed is going to hurt somebody, and it is going to save your life, in a threatening situation. If you've never taken a self-defense course in your life, and you can only take one, I suggest you take this one. I've taken 3 or 4 different versions of martial arts. I've got combat training in the military, but none of them prepared me for a real-time, on the street, somebody sticks a gun in your face or grabs you from behind and tries to do you bodily harm. None of them have prepared me for that like this course did.
What I expected when I came here was to learn about self-defense and ways to protect myself since I travel a lot by myself. Anyway, the thing that I really learned from this is to look at a person who might be approaching me as a person of target spots. And what I never expected to find was the amount of physical involvement that I would be put into. I think that's probably one of the greatest aspects of the course, that I came here thinking it would be a lot of lecture, some hands-on, but never expected there'd be so much intense hands-on. And the benefit of that is I've overcome my reluctance to put my hands onto a person, to break down what they've referred to as a social contract, something that is inherently in me, not to go after a person, not to touch another person. This course has given me the confidence to step into someone's space and to feel confident that I can approach that person and do what I have to do to survive. The only other physical training I ever took was at Quantico, Virginia, as a special agent, and in no way trying to demean the work that they do there at Quantico, but I would rate this training as far superior. The attitude, the lack of pride, the lack of arrogance here in making us feel that we're intelligent and we're on a peer level, even though we're neophytes, and just the professionalism of the men. Almost, you could hold them in awe, except that they make it so down to earth. So I'm extremely pleased with that aspect, and kudos to the entire staff.